If you're creative, whether that's an artist or a photographer, a designer, a florist, anyone who offers creative services, you've probably been worried about AI lately and wondering how AI is going to impact your business. Well, today we're going to talk about the state of AI and creative businesses and 4 different strategies to future-proof your business against AI. I'm Jamie Coast, a former Fortune 500 marketing strategist who picked up a paintbrush and started a successful multi-six-figure stationery business. You want to watch this or listen to this if you're on the podcast all the way through, because I'm going to get into some really nitty-gritty strategies today about how to AI-proof your business. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about is just the state of the AI landscape and how it's affecting creative businesses today. We're what I like to call the AI novelty phase. Everybody's checking it out. Everybody's using it. They're really excited about it. And it has this sort of novelty effect where everyone's trying to see, can I make my own art with it? Can I, make my own maps with it? Like, can I get away with using this new tool instead of working with an artist? And what we're quickly going to discover is the same thing that's been the case for years and years now, is that it takes a lot of skill and it takes a lot of talent, and it also takes taste and a point of view in order to get great art. So you have a lot of people using this tool now, but they're quickly going to discover that it's not quite good enough, or they're not quite good enough at getting what they want out of the tool without lots and lots of practice and developing that skill. So that is one thing that you should find comfort in right now, is that, AI is a tool just like any other tool, just like Photoshop or picking up a digital camera or picking up a paintbrush, right? People had the ability to do that before AI, and they weren't able to do it, right? They weren't able to use it to get it to look how they wanted it to look. There's a bit of like a taste skill gap there for a lot of people. And so AI is going to be the same way. Just because it's, maybe easier to get an output or faster to get an output doesn't mean that output is better. And so you are going to have a lot of people realizing very quickly that they can't use AI necessarily to get the result that they want. I see this with my maps all the time. One of the things I sell custom watercolor maps. And typically what I'm noticing these days is that people who come to me have tried to create their map in ChatGPT already. So the novelty of the thing, they tried it, they, played around with it, and they were frustrated with the results that they were getting. And so they decided to then pay an artist to hand do it. And so it's going to be the same thing in every creative discipline, whether that's photography or interior design or, art that hangs in your home. There is going to be this little bit of a novelty phase that we're going through right now. And then people are going to realize, actually, I can't get the professional result that I want without working with a professional. The other thing that you have to remember is AI is artificially cheap these days. So AI companies are currently just focused on mass adoption. They just want to get as many people using the technology as possible so that they get addicted to it and can't live without it. It's kind of their mentality. And so they are putting out these products for free or for very low monthly fees and not charging a ton of data usage fees. And we're starting to see that changing. If you use Claude, for example, you're starting to see that if you run out of credits, and you're running out of credits a lot faster than you were a couple months ago, now they're charging for credits. And the reason these AI companies are able to do this is because they're venture-backed. So they don't have to worry about profitability as much right now. In fact, most AI companies, whether it's Anthropic with Claude or OpenAI with ChatGPT, are not profitable at all. They're losing money every day, losing billions of dollars. And the way that they're able to do that is because they're raising funds elsewhere. But as we move into, the next stages of these companies, they're going to be beholden to their shareholders to start making money. And so they're going to need to start charging more and more for these tools in order to make enough money to be profitable. And so that's a good thing for artists. And it's, going to not slow the adoption of AI, but cause, people not to use AI for novelty reasons anymore and not necessarily for what I'm calling frivolous, sort of reasons. It's going to be used by businesses. It's going to be used by people who really need productivity gains, but the average person, is not going to be using AI in the same way that they're using it today. Just for, any old thing, they're going to be really monitoring their usage or going to have to pay high fees just to access it. And so it's similar to, any automation software right now. Like a lot of these things were already available and people weren't using them, not because it was too difficult and, AI has made it easier, although that's also true, but also just because you had to pay for it, right? And so you had to, put money down in order to get these productivity gains. I like to compare it to hiring an assistant, right? Anybody can hire an assistant, whether it's for, your personal, household chores and tasks, or whether it's for your business and maybe you're an entrepreneur, or maybe you're just a C-suite executive, things like that. Anybody can hire an assistant. Most people don't hire an assistant because it costs a lot of money and they're not necessarily interested in getting those productivity gains, or they just, it just doesn't even occur to them to get those productivity gains. And so the same thing is going to become true with AI, that some people are going to use it for productivity and they're really, really going to get a lot out of it. And other people are not, right? It's just not even going to occur to them to use AI for these things anymore, in the same way that it wouldn't occur to them to hire an assistant. Now let's talk about the 4 different ways that you can AI proof your business. The first one is personality. So your personality as an artist and a designer is what sells your creative services more than the work itself. If you've taken any sort of marketing classes, the first thing that they teach you in marketing is an example with a pencil. So if you were going to sell a pencil, there's, multiple ways to sell it. You can talk about all of the features that the pencil has, or you can talk about all of the benefits. And one of the core marketing principles is to focus on benefits and not to focus on features. Humans are hardwired psychologically to pay more attention to stories. They want to be entertained, and the things that really, kind of stick in their brain and cause them to take an action are usually story-driven content. And so that's, what are all of the benefits of the thing versus what the features are of the thing. So if I were trying to sell this pencil, I could list out all the things that are great about the pencil, right? So I could talk about how it's made of solid wood. I could talk about how high quality the graphite is. I could talk about how it has an eraser so that you can erase your mistakes. But that's not a very interesting way to sell a pencil, and it's not a very effective way to sell a pencil, right? I'm just listing out the features of a pencil. And especially with something like a pencil where it's sort of commoditized, right? There's real no difference between, pencil number 1 and pencil number 2, or even using an erasable pen, or, there's so many different writing implements that you can use. Going with a features approach is not going to differentiate your pencil from anybody else's. What is more effective is talking about the benefits of a pencil. So talking about the problems that it solves, how it can help you achieve your dreams, right? How it can, be the thing that gets you into journaling and causes a mindset shift, right? So talking about different stories, different benefits of the pencil is what's going to sell you on the pencil. And you'll see that if you watch, any sort of commercials for products, a lot of them are talking about the benefits of the service or the benefit of the product, and they're not talking about the features. So a little bit of homework for you as you're, watching and engaging with content this weekend is, pay attention to those commercials and see how many of them are selling the benefits of the thing versus the features of the thing, and which ones are more effective at getting you to want to buy the thing. A perfect example of that are luxury products, right? They really, really hone in on the benefits, and that is how they are able to sell these products at such a high price point. They talk about how, you're fitting into a certain club, or, how you're of a certain status in order to achieve that success of, owning a Chanel bag, or, buying a certain perfume. Wearing, Louboutin shoes, right? The commercials themselves never talk about, oh, it's made of handcrafted leather and, this shoe's going to last you forever and you can walk 1,000 miles in this shoe, right? It's all about how you feel in the shoe. what the shoe represents. And you'll see, especially in like perfume commercials and handbag commercials and beauty commercials of these high-end luxury products, they're all very aspirational. It's all about a feeling. It's a woman running through a field and laughing, right? They don't talk about the product at all. They're selling the benefits of the product, right? It's how you'll feel when you purchase or use the product. So that's how you also want to think about your own creative marketing, is you're not selling the features of your creative service, whether that's painting or taking photography, right? If you focus too much on the features, you're going to be commoditized and kind of seen as comparable to AI, right? If, AI can slap a filter on something and make it look like watercolor, is that what they're buying? They're usually focused on the person and wanting to work with a specific person. And so the more you can show off your personality and connect with someone human to human, that's always going to help you set you apart, set your art apart, and help you really connect with people so that they know, like, and trust you and want to buy with you because they want to work with you. Humans are always going to want to work with other humans. That's never going to change. And so the more you can do to emphasize your personality and what you bring to the table, and the story behind your art, the more interesting it's going to be for folks, and the more that they're going to crave and want that creative service and that connection with you as a person. The second way that you can AI proof your business is working with materials and scale that AI can't touch. So in my business, for example, I'm really well known for doing things on handmade paper and working with handmade paper. So that's a perfect example of something that AI can't do, right? AI can't make something on handmade paper physically in your home that you can hold in your hand and have that experience of, a really nice paper with deckled edges and, giving that as a gift. Versus if I just mocked something up, if I just asked AI, hey, can you put this on handmade paper? And I emailed it to someone. That's not the same experience as actually handing them a piece of handmade paper that you've painted a portrait on, for example. So just making that subtle shift is something that I did early on in my business. I still do a lot of watercolor commissions of, people's anniversary photos or their wedding photos, their engagement photos, things like that. And they're given as gifts for, their cotton anniversary or their paper anniversary, which is first or second, depending on whether you're going by the US rules or the UK order of anniversaries. But just making that subtle shift of, instead of painting it on just plain watercolor paper, I paint it on handmade paper. It differentiates me from not only other artists, but it also differentiates me from AI, and is a reason why people pick my product and pay more for my product than they would pay, $5 for some Etsy person to put, a watercolor filter on it, or, just doing it for free in AI. And I still sell those all the time, for several $100s, portraits on handmade paper. So you can do things like that too. If you're currently, a digital artist, or, you're doing things that are a little bit more easily repeatable by AI, I would really encourage you to think about the ways that you can work with different materials, work with scale, and, maybe even print your products on different materials and offer that as part of your offering in order to differentiate yourself from AI. So another example, you can create your art on any sort of material, right? You can do canvas, you could do wood. What you want to just think about is, you could do sculpture. What you want to do is think about things that AI can't easily replicate. And that's a great way to future-proof your business. Scale is another one. If you're currently, painting things in 8x10, think about offering things at, a much, much larger scale for people to put in their home as statement pieces, right? That sort of, elevating your market in that way is a really great example of something that AI is never going to be able to do. AI is never going to be able to, create a custom portrait of a family that becomes an heirloom that you could hang in your home. So those are different ways to think about material and scale. Strategy number 3 is to niche into experiences and services. not just the deliverables themselves, not just the product of your art or photography or floral design or interior design, but actually, talk about the experience of it and sell the experience of it. So, some examples that are, inherently human, very AI proof, live wedding painting. So if you're an artist, but you're now selling not just your ability to do the art, not just the product, but actually you coming to their wedding and the experience of that. It's, the entertainment of that. That's something that AI is not going to be able to replicate. Live caricature or portraits. Porch or seasonal decorating services is another example. So there are a couple of very successful businesses that I've seen as case studies that all they do is decorate porches, right? So in, some of these wealthier neighborhoods, they offer, for the fall, they decorate it with pumpkins and hay. And for the holidays, they do your entire lighting and, front porch with, Christmas trees or presents or things like that to make your porch stand out and look very photogenic, right? Look very Instagram worthy or Pinterest worthy. So a service like that is something that's very difficult for AI to replicate, right? It's, very physical. It is about the experience. It's about the service. And it requires, a human to come to your home. That's something that AI is not going to ever be able to replicate, even with a robot. So thinking about those sorts of things and how you can niche into your experiences and what you're offering is, a really great way to differentiate yourself. So, I think this is very easy for people who are, interior designers, wedding planners, photographers, right? You already know that you're selling sort of the in-person experience of the thing. Anyone can, throw a photo into ChatGPT and get a room redesigned, but, no one can hire ChatGPT to actually come into their space, look around, talk to them, understand their stories, recommend specific pieces to buy and make sure they fit. All of those sorts of things are, more about the experience and the service itself and less about what the actual deliverable is. I think it's, a little bit harder maybe to wrap your mind around this idea if you're more of a traditional artist or, someone who provides digital artwork, for example, but you can still highlight the experience of working with you and the services that you're able to offer in any of your communications, right? And you might want to think about different ways that you could offer, different services or experiences as a complement to your core offer in order to future-proof your business. Strategy number 4 is to develop a signature style. So a lot of people have talked about this when it comes to art already. And, it's something that I'll probably do an entire episode on at some point. But your signature style is really, really important when it comes to selling yourself and differentiating yourself as an artist or a designer. It is one of those things that you really want to think about why someone should hire you versus another artist or another designer. And the way that you do that is having, a very strong point of view and having, a very strong personality as a designer and expressing that through whatever your signature style is. So, for example, one of the things I did early on in my business, and this is great advice for differentiating yourself and setting yourself apart, just generally in any sort of saturated market. But it's also, very useful for future-proofing your business against AI as well, is thinking about what makes you unique and thinking about how you can differentiate your business and your signature style. So as I was saying, one of the things that I did very early on is, as a stationery designer, set myself up as, a watercolor artist primarily, and, someone who does watercolor stationery. And I wanted to become known for that, right? So I told every planner I talked to that, watercolor was my specialty. I told, all of my photos on Instagram and my website, showcased watercolor forward artwork and watercolor forward stationery design. And so as I became known for that, I started to get recommended for that more and more. It gave, planners a reason to reach out to me versus another stationery designer. Whenever they wanted watercolor artwork, they thought of Jamie. And so, they recommended my company. Same thing with, any of my marketing. When people were looking for watercolor maps or they were looking for watercolor venue portraits, they would find me and they would see that all of my work was very similar and, see what my signature style was. And either they were attracted by that or they were repelled by that. And so that's another core marketing principle is, the more that you attract people, the more that you'll repel people. And that's okay. That's actually what you want. If you're trying to target everyone, you're really targeting no one, right? So having that sort of clear point of view in mind and that clear signature style is also going to set you apart from AI because AI doesn't have that, right? AI right now, if you type in, generate a watercolor design of something for me, they all look, kind of the same. It's like a very generic watercolor look with like colored splatter all over it. It's a very similar style and you can tell it to make different styles, right? But as a consumer, you don't really necessarily know that level of detail of what you even want to describe it to AI, right? But as an artist, you can develop your own signature style and you can showcase it over and over and over again to your target market in order to get them to say, yes, that's what I want. I don't know how to describe it. I wouldn't know how to make it, right? I wouldn't know how to even ask for it. But when I see it, I know it when, they see your work. So that's another great way to sort of distinguish yourself. And then I actually am going to talk about a fifth. So this is a little bonus strategy for you. And that's, targeting high-end clients. Calligraphers do this really well. There's a place within, high-end clients. Like one of the things that luxury market really, really wants is they want something distinctive. And they want something that has that proof of hand, right? They want it to look hand-drawn because human-made and, handcrafted is more expensive and people know that. And so that allure of being more expensive is something that you can use to your advantage and you can start to target like more luxury buyers instead of targeting, middle market or, value seekers, right? Those people are more likely to go to AI for artwork versus a high-end customer, a luxury customer is actually more likely to go to a person, right? Because they don't want to look cheap. They want to look like they spent a lot of time, they spent a lot of money, and they spent a lot of care and, had attention to detail there. Calligraphers are a perfect example of a type of artist that does this really well. They really focus on the experience, the tradition of calligraphy, and they've been really successful with luxury buyers in particular of offering, not only the service of like live calligraphy, but also the product of calligraphy as well. When you get a handwritten place card, it gives you a different feeling than, getting a printed place card at a wedding, right? If you're trying to, really elevate your event and showcase that you've spared no expense, you've, really paid attention to all the little details, you wanted to give the guests something personal, a handwritten, hand calligraphed place card or menu or things like that, or wedding favor is something that's really going to stand out and set you apart in that way. So by targeting that sort of luxury buyer, you are future-proofing your business simply because the luxury buyer is way more likely to want to work directly one-on-one with a person. They're also willing to work with a person and wanting to work with a person for the high-end service aspect of it, right? For the hospitality aspect of it. So again, like going back to our experiences and services point, we, really want to hone in on that and making sure that our client experience is as top-notch as possible because that's what high-end clients are expecting and why they want to work. So to kind of sum up, I want to talk about, who AI actually threatens as an artist and who it doesn't. So the artists who have a low risk for AI replacing them are ones with a strong personal brand, ones doing high-end luxury custom work, anything physical or experiential, and those who are working with different materials, different scale than what AI can achieve. The artists who are at a little bit of a higher risk are ones who are creating, generic digital deliverables that don't have a clear signature style. Anyone who's doing sort of basic template work, anyone who's targeting, sort of the value seekers or the middle market. And then, anyone who doesn't work with different materials and scale, right? Like digital art is, something that is a little bit more at risk. And anyone who's not using their personality to sell their work. So to close, AI is really a tool. It's not a replacement for taste or the relationships you build with different referral partners or physical craft. The creative businesses that are going to win in this space are the ones that really double down on what makes them human and leans into what makes them human and showcase that throughout all of their marketing. It's not going to be the artists who try and out AI the AI, right? Who try and do it faster, who try and do it cheaper. It's going to be the ones that lean into what makes humans uniquely human. If you have a question about your business that you'd like me to answer on the show, I would love if you headed to marketinganswerspodcast.com/ask, type in your question, and I will create a future episode that answers it specifically. I really love to answer real questions that I get from real creative business owners every week, and so I'm looking forward to your questions. In my next episode, I'm going to talk about rebranding your creative business and why it's not always the thing that's going to get you more sales. I'm answering a real question that I got from somebody recently where they talk about how they spent $10,000 to rebrand their creative business and it didn't get them any more sales. So if that is something of interest to you and you want to understand the difference between rebranding, sales, and marketing, definitely check out that episode next.